My name is David Palter. I'm the Associate for Workforce Development here at the Leadership Group. The number one priority of our education and workforce portfolio is to strengthen and to diversify the STEM pipeline. And we believe that one of the best ways that we can do this is to create stronger training and employment relationships between our Silicon Valley companies and our Silicon Valley community colleges. Why community colleges? Size, diversity, and talent. At 2.1 million students, our community college system here in California is the largest system of higher education of any kind in the nation. 60% of all California undergraduates actually attend community college. 3 out of 10 young people, 16 ages 24, attend community college. And because these schools have made a concerted effort to forge strong ties to communities that are traditionally underrepresented in post-secondary education, they're also incredibly diverse. Here in Silicon Valley, 71% students of color, 53% women. And then there's the question of talent. Can these students, kids who grew up in the shadows of some of the most productive, most innovative companies in the world, can they contribute? Well, the Leadership Group believes that they can. On June 6th, the Leadership Group initiated a formal partnership with all 7 community college districts in our region because we looked at the numbers. So we looked at this 2.1 million students. We looked at this diversity, 71% students of color, 53% women. And we looked at this potential for STEM excellence. So if there's one statistic, I know you're going to a lot of panels, but if there's one statistic about community colleges I'd like you to take away from today, it's this. Given that our economy is driven by STEM talent, it's useful to consider the fact that 48% of University of California STEM graduates, 48%, began their post-secondary careers in a California community college. So we looked at these numbers, right? The size, the diversity, the potential for STEM excellence, and the value proposition to our employer members was clear, not only of helping to shape the direction of this massive educational system over the next decade, but of the chance to build relationships with students, local students with strong, deep ties to this community at a strategic juncture in their lives when they're making academic and career path choices. To tell you more about what one of our committed community college partners is doing to strengthen the next generation of Silicon Valley workers, please join me in welcoming Chabot Las Positas Vice Chancellor Krista Johns.
Thanks, Dave. And you notice I have a binder. We educators can't keep it to 5 minutes without our words written out for us, so sorry about that. But it's really nice to be here, and it's nice to be in a room with folks who are interested and committed to spending time increasing the diversity of employees and pipelines for students into the tech world. And as I look at the audience, I think to myself, I hope next time we have this conference, when our eyes meet, there'll be a spirit of recognition, and the educators won't cling to the other educators, and the tech people won't avoid eye contact with some of those educators, and we'll all be part of that same affinity group. That would be great. If I could share with you just a little bit about our district. We're up the road a ways. Our district office is in Dublin. We have a college in Livermore, Las Positas College, and a college in Hayward, Chabot College. Between the two colleges, we serve about 29,000 students a year. The district's pretty old. It's been around for more than 50 years, and about the time of the educational master plan, many of these community colleges were formed. We, like most community colleges, consider ourselves a comprehensive college. That is, we offer multiple degrees, technical certificates, transfer programs, as well as short-term skills training for employees. We have an economic development department that also supports apprenticeships. And as many of you probably know, apprenticeships aren't just for the trades anymore. We have apprenticeships in the tech world. We have apprenticeships in finance. If you haven't learned more about that, we'd love to talk with you. And of course, we run academies, institutions, little programs and long programs for employees at particular employers. And so we work with several of the mid-sized companies in that way. Let me say that I was really happy that we had a number of leaders in the California community colleges here today. And I will probably leave someone out, but I noticed that we had the chief executive officers of 2 districts here. We had Dr. Debbie Budd from the San Jose Evergreen District. We have Dr. Joelle Laguerre from the Peralta District. And we have a number of college CEOs. The reason I bring that up is these are the thought leaders for their institutions. These are the individuals who can help set vision and direction for their institutions. And these are the individuals who've had to guide their systems through recognizing that true equity is found when you bring different people to the table to try and think about equity. So when we talk about the pipeline up, we need to talk about the pipeline in too. And I know that we have some expertise through our own growing and learning pains in that area that we'd love to share with industry. Okay, so I wanted to ask, how many of you here are working, have a job, by show of hands? Oh, wow, that's fun, wonderful. And if you have children or nieces and nephews, do you plan for them or wish for them that they would be able to have a job? Okay, so let's face it. This whole idea of career education as being some kind of weird little category, just throw it out the window, right? We want people to come in and be our workforce, and they can take many pathways there. But the objective is one we share, and it's not one that falls into a lot of typical categories. Community colleges serve a tremendous service, not just for those students. I'm not sure, but I spend a lot of time trying to talk to us guys about why community colleges are so great for our kids. The fact is, you'll be able to attend a class that's taught by a PhD or master's expert, not the grad student. We have intensive student services and learning resources so that we can mass customize experiences for our students, and we're doing more and more of that in the actual classrooms as well. If you want to have someone who is going to learn those people skills, those soft skills, that's core to most of our degree programs. And so really, I am a big fan of the mission and the work that the community colleges do, including our own district. And so our students make wonderful employees and interns. Let me just say that I know there sometimes is reluctance to hire or even have internships for individuals in the community college. And for many of the degree pathways, what is different between the community college student and the BA student is simply time on task. Your internship is going to be open to someone who has already gained that content and just needs to put in those months and years in order to gain that mastery that you're looking for. And why not do it with you for part of that time? We have a big initiative that came down for community colleges, 200 million signed in last year, called the Strong Workforce Program. It's geared to expanding career opportunities and to basically make us shape up a little bit by making sure our programs are relevant, current, and tied to workforce needs in our region. There's performance funding. And right now, we have to show how our positions and how our programs are leading to jobs, not just well-paying jobs, but jobs with upward mobility. So again, we need to work together to make sure that when we get a diverse population to our front door, that they also have those ways to move up the ladder and to really stay with you a long time and be the think leaders. So let me go ahead and introduce our speaker, who has promised that he's going to leave us with some challenging ideas, and I believe it's true. We have an international presenter with us today and an author, Mark Prensky. He's also one who's kind of famous for coining a term, the digital native. That's not his topic today necessarily, but he is an expert in education and how the connections fall between education and technology. His particular professional focus is on designing better pedagogy and curriculum for the digital generation, and on helping people understand how to thrive in the digital age. Mark has spoken in more than 40 countries, authored 7 books, published essays, over 100 essays, and his writing has been translated into 11 languages. So in terms of relevance, it's kind of a neat little stat. His latest book, Education to Better Their World, Unleashing the Power of 21st Century Kids, is actually a finalist for the 2016 Forward Indies Book of the Year Awards in Education. It won it, didn't it? It won the prize. Can we give you an applause? I don't know if there are any out here for us to look for.
No, but we have, I'll tell you how.
Okay, he's going to tell us how.
Don't worry.
One last thing about Mark is that he's the founder and executive director of the Global Future Education Foundation and Institute. And his topic with us today is civilization level change in education, empowering kids to better their world. Thank you. And Mark, will you come forward, please?
Thank you so much. Hi, everybody. Good morning, almost afternoon. There are seats up here if any of you want to come. They're reserved for you. Thank you for being here. I am thrilled to be here. I moved from New York City 2 years ago, and this is one of the great opportunities that I've had to talk to educators here in Silicon Valley. I've been given 30 minutes. I will try to stay within that 30 minutes. I may go a couple of minutes over. I know I'm the only thing between you and lunch. If you get hungry, please feel free. But I'm going to talk to you about something that I've been thinking about recently, which is called civilization level change in education. That's what we need. The acronym, by the way, is ceviche, if you want to remember it. And, you know, it's really funny that we talk about this community colleges and academic education and vocational education. One thing that you really need to bear in mind is that academic education really is vocational education for academics. And if we wanted all our kids to be academics, that would be great. So you don't have to take, I'm going to go very fast. I'm going to go at Twitch speed, New York speed, whatever you want to call it. I know you've had a chance to have some coffee, but you can get the slides by just sending me an email. You can also give me feedback or send a question, and I'll be happy to answer that. So one of the things I discovered in moving out here, of course, everywhere, we all have a perspective on education. It's very hard to change education because when you talk to somebody, they know what's best in education. They know what it is. So I'm going to try to give you a new perspective, which is what I do for a living. I really try to change people. I hope you'll keep your minds open as we do this and go through. And here's what I think. What's changing in education is what an education is, what education means, and what being educated means. And that's starting to really change in the world. And we won't get where we want to go, if that's true, and I will show you why it's true and how it's true, by making incremental changes to our current system. And we try to do this, and we have, you know, in some places they're still getting the poor and the minorities into the schools. Here, there's a big conversation about charter schools and technology. We're all here talking about STEM and 21st century skills and things like that. That's where 99% of the effort's going. Less than 1% is going into thinking about a different education. And that's what I want to think about. So I'm talking about a fundamental paradigm change to what I call education to better their world. I'm not here to sell books, but if you want information, there'll be information. Now, the way I look at it, and the place to start, is not where we are today. I start with the kids. And I've always been in this field because I really care about kids. And, you know, the real truth is that the kids who are already in our system today, already in school today, like my kid who's 12 in the 7th grade in the Palo Alto schools, they will more or less go through the current system. It will change a little bit, but it won't change a lot in their lifetimes. So I'm really thinking about these kids. I'm really thinking about the kids who are not born or just born and who are going to be coming up in the world, because how much will the world have changed in 20 years when that kid goes into the workplace? And we all know that that's enormous. So these kids need to get to the future, not just equipped for the world of yesterday where we grew up, which was mostly a reading world, but equipped with the skills and experiences that are going to allow them to thrive in a very new and different context, the context of the third millennium. Because some of the kids today are going to live into not just the 21st century, but the 22nd century. Those kids need our help to become the people that they want to be and we want them to be, and importantly, not just the people that we want them to be. And there's a lot of this kind of stuff that goes on, and if I can be so bold, the STEM push is a little bit of this. And I can only say that because I was part of the first STEM push, which was Sputnik. And I was pushed into math and science, and it took me till the end of college to get out. I still love math and science, but that was not where I needed to go. So we have to be a little careful about identifying the right people who should be in STEM and making sure they get the access and the STEM that they need. How do we prepare these kids for the future? How do we prepare them to thrive in a new and different world? I bet all of them, or many of them, will experience weightlessness in their time. How do we unleash their power? That's the most important point. And I think to do that, we'd better reimagine education. And this is happening in the world. And we'd better get a vision of a different education. So that's what I'm really here to do, is to give you a vision that better fits the kids of tomorrow and unleashes their power. And hopefully some of this vision will be things that you can do today. So that's what I'm here to do, is to leave you with a vision of where things are going and can go. But to do that, we need some new perspectives. So that's what I'm going to spend my time doing, is giving you new perspectives. Let's start with the world. No matter how fast you think the world is changing, it's changing faster, I guarantee. And this chart, which is a chart of population over time, shows that for most of human history, the population was very small, and then in our lifetime, starting about the turn of the millennium, it started rising exponentially and going through the roof. And that's also innovation and change, and a lot of things are following that curve, and we are right in the middle of that curve. That's why we have Singularity University and all these other things. So the world is already evolving extremely rapidly. And two things that I think characterize it, or three things. One, lots of technologies are converging. So I'm not going to read these to you, but these are all technologies that were separate but are now coming together. We have a world of VUCA. If you haven't heard that term, it's volatility, complexity, uncertainty, ambiguity. It's a military term, it's a business term. VUCA is growing everywhere. And we have this world of accelerating change. And the emphasis here is not on the change, which we've all seen, it's on the pace of change, the acceleration. Because that's what's different. That's what humans have never experienced before. The fact that you get a device that's expensive and in 6 months, it's old. So we have to do that. We're going to be preparing the kids that we're preparing for a very different world. And equally importantly, we're going to be preparing very different kids. So let me give you a new perspective on kids, and let me see if I can get this thing to get rid of the, maybe I can't. Okay, never mind. Give you a new perspective on kids. Technology is giving the kids so many new capabilities and these are the kids who have it all, and these are the kids who are just on the verge of getting it. So many new capabilities that they're not the same people that we were when we were in school. They're far more empowered. And I spoke to the guy who's doing the school in wherever it is, Oakland, and I said, how many kids have a cell phone? He said, over 90%. So these kids are empowered. They're becoming people with what I call extended brains, because as soon as you have a cell phone and better a smartphone in your pocket, your brain is enormously extended. And what's more important is that those brains are all networked together. And we have hardly begun to figure out how to take advantage of this. The fact that our kids can do infinitely more that our computers can't. Okay. Let me see. I'm going to see if I can actually make a fix here. Make this full screen. And, whoa, it doesn't want to do that. Okay, forget about it. Slideshow from the current slide. I don't know how to get that stuff off the bottom and top. Right. Slide, okay. This is called digital immigrant, folks. That's me. Okay, but thank you for all your help. So we're still stuck with that junk on the bottom. Okay, sorry about that. So the kids can collaborate in new ways, right? We're collaborating in the old way. We're shouting out. The kids are already empowered to do all these kinds of things in new ways and better ways. And these are a lot of the things that we already do in school and want kids to do beyond school. And I'll give you examples. How many of you know iWire? Okay, iWire is a game designed specifically to help people map the connectome of the brain. It's a very difficult thing to do. It requires some human intervention to follow the neurons where they go, and this is a game designed to do that. Elementary school kids, primary school kids can do this and are doing this. So they're doing real science. They're actually mapping the connectome. Kids who are around 12 can print 3D prosthetic hands. Now that's not so hard because there's a site called Enable that has the plans. But what the kids can do now is they can use their social skills to go out on the web and find the kids who need the hands and then create custom hands for each of those kids. We have problems with things like police abuse and bullying, domestic violence. Kids see these problems. They write apps. First one, the cops came to a family's home late at night in Georgia. And they discovered in the first 2 seconds it was a mistake, but they decided they'd better process everybody in that family through the computer just in case. Well, the family felt harassed, the kids felt harassed. There were 3 high school age kids. They created an app to rate the police. It's a Yelp for police encounters. And you can go on the cloud and compare the police in various departments. That's called 5.0. Another kid saw that kids were being bullied. Now, we all don't have that problem here, but they couldn't find a table to sit at lunch where they wouldn't be bullied. She wrote an app to reserve a table at a non-bullying table called Sit With Us. Another one said domestic violence is a problem. They wrote an app that listens in your house. You don't even have to turn it on. When it hears the screaming and other kinds of signs of domestic violence, it automatically calls the cops. So this is what kids are doing, and that's just the beginning. Education has to take advantage of these capabilities. Today, if you really think about it from the kids' point of view, if you listen to them, they will tell you they are disrespected, underappreciated, and underestimated in their capabilities. And I'm just not making that up. I go around the world talking to kids, and I hear that from all of them. So when you look out at a room of kids, whether you're in a community college or in India or wherever you are, you can't see little us's anymore. You have to see extended brains all networked together. And you have to adapt what you're doing to that, to those extended brains. Also treat them as individuals and people with backgrounds and all the things we heard early this morning, absolutely. But don't neglect the fact that they are different in this new way. So how do we prepare these empowered kids with their new capabilities for this new world? How do we do it? And there's a lot of complaints about that we're not doing it right, but very few suggestions for how to do it better. So I'm going to try to give you some how to think about education in a new way, not just adding on incrementally to what we've done before, but really a new vision that I want you to take away and think about and talk to me about and reflect on, of a new and different and better education that better fits these kids of today and especially tomorrow. Now, the interesting thing is I'm not making this up. This is emerging. And what's going on is that there's this huge wall between what's emerging and our current education. So it's very hard for us to get through it, even if we add 21st century skills and social, emotional, and standards, and STEM, and school choice, and small classes, and technology. We still don't get through because we lack a new perspective on what education should be. So that's what I'm going to try to give you in the remainder of this presentation. A new perspective on the ends of education, on the means, on the curriculum, on the teaching, and on technology being used in education. So let's start with the ends of education, because that's the most important. They're changing from learning and earning grades in subjects, which we have thought of as the ends of education and improving people intellectually, to improving our world. And more people are starting to focus on this. We still ask kids for this academic achievement and success and knowledge of subjects and getting ready for college and going to college and community college. But what's going to happen in the future is that I'm going to get off the network and then I'll be a lot better off. Okay. We'll be asking our kids to make their world a better place. That's a very different aim to tell kids. If you tell kids your goal is to achieve academically, that's what they'll strive to do. If you tell them to make their world a better place, that's the goal, that's what they'll strive to do. They can already do it in tons of different ways. I won't read them, but you can. And they're doing it, and they want to do more. And I'm sure lots of you have heard kids who say, we want to change the world. I say, when I hear that, I say, wait a little, let's be careful. Hitler changed the world. We want to improve the world. Thank you very much. And so this has to have a positive effect on the world, the kinds of changes that we want to make. And we're seeing a lot of people think this way. That's what really motivated me to do this work and write this book. So those of you who know about the International Baccalaureate, they're trying to create a better world through education. Those of you who know Ashoka, they want to, every young person can change the world for the better. Those of you who've ever heard of Michael Fullen, a big consultant and thinker in Canada, education's emerging role is developing humanity. So I'm not alone in this. This is sort of a consensus that is forming bottom up in the world, that the future ends of education are for the kids to better their world, not the world in anybody's opinion, but their world, and to become good, effective, world-improving people. That's what we would like in the world. So that's the new perspective on the ends of education. It's not just better students academically, it's a better world. And people improving, of course, in the process. And it's not just getting grades, it's becoming good, effective, world-improving people. So how do we do that? Here's the interesting part, and this took me a long time in my life to get to. Learning is not the goal of education. We talk about it to death, and if you look at all the books on education, they all say learning in their title. Learning is just a means. Learning is a means to becoming a good, effective, world-improving people. It's a means we can't avoid because we're learning people, but there's even a better means to get there. And that means is real world accomplishment, leading to real world results. And that's what our kids can do now. We need less emphasis on the learning part and more emphasis on the accomplishment part. That's what our kids need to do. And the reason is just what we were talking about early this morning, self-esteem and self-confidence. The thing that builds self-esteem and self-confidence, yes, your roots are very important and all that, I agree, but it's accomplishment, what you do in the world. And interestingly enough, if you look at it statistically, the best predictor of future accomplishment is past accomplishment. So the more of it you do, the better you get at it. Now, you could argue that education has always thought about making the world a better place. But the interesting change is how we do it. So in today's paradigm, we put kids together with content. Content, really very important. We hope that that produces some learning of that content, mostly in an academic sense, and that leads us to, quote, improved people, mostly intellectually. That's what we do. And then we put this enormous bet on the table. And that bet is that someday those guys, those improved intellectual people, will go out and make the world a better place. And we all know that the truth is some do and some don't. Here's a better way that we can do now. We can put kids together from the very beginning, from kindergarten, with real world problems. You know, our kids are not polite enough in the neighborhood, our kids, whatever it is, the real world problems, kids come up with solutions. It's amazing. And they're often solutions that we haven't thought of. And that leads us to an improved world while the kids are still in school. You can put those on the floor. While the kids are still in school. But the kicker is that the kids become people who know how to improve the world and do it for the rest of their lives. They know how to do it. They know they can do it because they've done it in school as part of their education. That's what we're really looking for. It's a move from personal achievement of individuals and grades and success to real-world accomplishment, teams, world improvement. I make a big distinction. Achievement is for you. Very nice. Accomplishment is something you do for the world. So the new perspective on means is this. Learning in advance, taking all these courses and stuff like that, courses, discussions, tests, whatever we do, is moving to this idea of real-world accomplishment while you are a student. And the idea of made-up problems, PBL, problem-based learning, all this kind of stuff that are mostly made up, is being replaced by real-world projects that solve real-world problems, so that our kids become what my good friend and fellow educator Zawile calls solutionaries. We actually have people who, when they see a problem, they can find and implement a solution. Now, here's the thing for this particular group. This works better for the kids because the kids love accomplishing, but it also works better for the employers. Because if you look at Google's website, and I'm just going to use them as a representative, this is what they say they're looking for. Not people with great grades, people who can get things done. And school, unfortunately, has not been about getting things done, and it needs to be. So more examples, and I'll go very quickly. First grader started a foundation to dig water wells in Africa. They've done hundreds of thousands of wells, I think. 9-year-olds designed a new water park. The idea was the city put out an RFP. The kids said, we can design that. They did the designs. They went to the city council. They got them approved. And the architects chosen were told, build the kids' designs. 11-year-old, they need an environmental report. They said, oh, instead of hiring a consultant this year for whatever amount, let's hire our 6th graders. So instead of just doing an environmental report as they would normally do for class, they did the government-mandated report, and it was accepted. 11-year-old is one of the world's top cryptographers. 16-year-old walks into a restaurant where they give out the crayons to the little kids and said, what do you do with them when you're done? We throw them away. That's stupid. Let's collect them and give them to kids who need crayons. He puts bins in restaurants, they collect them, they sanitize them, they send them out to the world. 16, restoring historic artifacts, building supercomputers. You have a lot of old laptops and desktops, the instructions to make a supercomputer right on the web. Go ahead and do it. And then you can ask the question, what do we do with a supercomputer in our school? What questions do we ask? San Diego, the government bought all this expensive equipment to do water testing after each rainfall. They hired a lot of people. California ran out of money. They fired the people. The kids in the high school heard about this, and they said, we can do that. So they learned to use the equipment. They did the same testing. The government wouldn't accept their results. You're not official. So what did they do? They published the results online, and the people who needed them got the same results. So I've put together, along with my partners that I'll tell you about, a student project database. So you can go through and look at all these things, and now we have 50, but there are going to be hundreds in there, and you can see what these kids are doing, and then click on one and get some more details about what it is, just as an inspiration for teachers and students at all levels, even from kindergarten to community college and beyond, as to what kids can do these days. Here are kids who built a whole robotic system for cleaning the world's biggest radio telescope. So this database is available on the web. It's available on the App Store, on Google Play. You can get it on your phone. It's free. It's just for your inspiration. Okay, now a new perspective on curriculum. We've got to get past these subjects. Math, English, science, social studies. My acronym is the MESS. And believe me, everybody relates to the MESS. Right? We have to get, because they're proxies for things that we used to do hundreds of years ago. They're not the way to organize this. We need to organize around skills, like thinking and acting and relating and accomplishing. That's the way we need to organize education. We come from the thinking tradition. Most of us have had those robes on. But that's only one tradition. The older tradition is the accomplishment tradition. It's father to son. It's master to apprentice. So we heard about apprenticeships. That tradition is what's gone into our workplaces. Now we call it training. The academic tradition has captured our schools. So our schools are totally academic. What we need to do is bring the two together, because thinking, and even if it becomes critical thinking and problem solving that we all talk about these days, that rarely leads to success if it's not combined with action and relationships and accomplishment. So we only have 1/4 of the puzzle when we do the thinking part. We have to put these traditions back together into a curriculum of generalized skills that support. Speaking of skills, we do a very, very tiny, narrow band of skills: reading and math and understanding written communication and writing and research and maybe a few other things. What we need, what kids really need, is this. And we don't teach these things systematically. In fact, you can't read that. So what I'm going to do for the next minute is literally go at lightning speed through all of this list. And as you see them flash on the screen, I want you to think of 3 things. Do kids need this? Do we give them this systematically? Could we? So here we go. These are the action skills. So we talk about grit. It's only one of many. Same with entrepreneurship and innovation. And then the relationship skills. We do one-on-one, but so are there any of those that we don't want our kids to have? Now, we don't have time to do courses in all of these things, but those are all lifelong skills, and our job should be to get the kids started on acquiring those skills. We've got to figure out better ways to do that. We don't have good ways. So the new perspective on curriculum is not the traditional subjects, the mess, or even putting that into nice topics like in Finland. Lifelong skills, thinking, acting, relating, accomplishing. And not acquiring those skills in advance by going through course after course after course after course. It's doing it as you need them while you accomplish through these projects. So that leads us to teaching, and teaching is going through a huge transition. And the transition is away from content delivery. Content delivery is available everywhere now. What the kids need is coaching and empowerment. And there's a brand new teaching job that's emerging because the kids need help in applying their passions to projects that improve their world. They need respect and trust. That's what they keep asking for. They need independence. They need for us to believe in them. And this is my colleague, Esther Wojcicki, who some of you may know. This is what her ex-student, James Franco, says. She showed me I could take my dreams as seriously as I wanted. And that's what we really need. So the new perspective on teaching is from content delivery to coaching and empowerment. And the new perspective on technology is really simple too. It's just use it to make the world better. If you do all these things, if you use it for writing and searching and research, we've done that before technology. That's trivial. The new stuff is real-time connection, creating, doing complex analyses, et cetera, et cetera. So the new perspective on technology is not the old things in new ways. It's helping kids improve their world and doing new things. Do I have time to sum up? Okay. Okay. So our kids have started to improve the world on their own. Our job is to make them more powerful. More and more people are seeing this. We have to have a different education, ends of better their world. The new education is starting to emerge. We need a new name, like Better Their World Education. We need to convince ourselves that it's better. Here is what St. Augustine says: in essentials unity, in all else liberty, in all things charity. The unity is in the principle that the ends have changed from helping individuals to bettering the world, helping humanity. The liberty is go out and do it in any way you want, and the charity comes in looking at kids in a more positive way. And we better do some experimentation. If you ever hear this from a parent, you have to say it's irresponsible not to, because they live in a very different world. So we better figure this out, because our kids need an education that more deeply combines the academic and accomplishment traditions, that integrates them into their local and global communities better, as we heard this morning, that empowers them further with independence and self-knowledge and a strong sense of how they fit into the future to better their world. And help parents, of course, along the way. We need to educate families. So the new education's better for all of us. We can create it. These are some of my partners who are creating it, so I know this can be done. We're on the ground floor of something very different, a new world to come. It's full of imagination, full of creativity, full of innovation, full of entrepreneurial spirit. And I'm a huge optimist about the future of education. And the reason is because I'm an optimist about the kids. And I don't just mean these kids who have everything, all kids everywhere. Here are the new ABCs. This is what I think education has to be about. Accomplish things that improve your world, become a good, effective, world-improving person, and the C is just keep going, continue, which leads to a better world. So here's what you can do. I want to leave you with something you can actually do. Go to these sites, Better Their World Student Project Database. Go to Civilization Level Change in Education. See what it is, but most importantly, whether it's through apprenticeships or anything else, connect every single kid with a real-world project that has a measurable, positive impact on the world. Again, get the slides. Thank you.
So a huge thank you again to Mark. One more round of applause. I keep getting the unenviable task of cutting off our great speakers to transition. But before that, I would like to bring up the Superintendent of Santa Clara County, John Gundry, to offer a couple of comments, followed by our CEO, Carl Guardino.
Thank you. I've got exactly 4 minutes to tell you what I think about the state of education in Santa Clara County. And Mark said a lot of things that I talk about all the time. You know, what Mark is talking about is really what we commonly refer to as 21st century learning. I'm glad he mentioned Esther Wojcicki. She's an amazing teacher and practitioner. Her classroom is what classrooms ought to look like all over this country. I want to say a couple of specific things. One has to do with standards. You know, a lot of people believe that the standards are low in the United States, and that's why our schools are struggling. Those of you who work in schools probably know the standards have never been higher, and school has never been more difficult than it is today. Our kids are being asked to do things, particularly in math and science, that those of us who went to school 40 years ago probably can't even imagine. I can't do high school math. I was a high school principal and didn't even know what was going on in the math classrooms. It was far, far more difficult than it was when I was in school. The problem is we have much higher standards in most subject areas. I wouldn't say all. I don't think our kids can write as well as they used to, but I think they can do a lot more math. The problem is our standards, I think as Mark alluded to, are firmly rooted in the 20th century. And so we're still preparing kids for success in a century that's already gone by. And this experience-based learning that Mark is talking about is really what we need to focus on. Now, there's some problems, some barriers in our way in getting that done. And when you look around our county, you see tremendous variance in what's going on. There are pockets of excellence, and there are areas where kids and families are really struggling. And so it's hard to summarize what's going on in Santa Clara County because it's very different from one place in the county to another. Also, within school districts, it can be very different from one school to another, the experiences kids are having in our schools. Equity is a huge issue. You know, ironically, we live in one of the most politically liberal places in the world, and yet I think we have greater inequity in school funding here than probably anywhere in the United States. Our children from one side of the county or the other do not have their schools funded in the same way. And some of our schools are funded at more than double what they are in other parts of the county. And then you have the same expectations for achievement and outcomes for kids who are in schools that are woefully underfunded with those that are very well funded because of the way we fund schools in California. I'm not advocating taking funding away from schools. I'm advocating funding all schools at the high level that some of our schools are funded at, because money does make a difference in education. California currently ranks about 45th, depending on what measure you use, in per pupil funding for education in the United States, and that's up. We were ranked 50th before the passage of Proposition 30. That's 50 out of 51. The state of Utah is so low funded, will never fall to that low level. But being 45th, and what's happened during this time is everybody seems to think, well, Governor Brown took care of the school funding issue with Prop 30 and with LCFF, the local control funding formula. What he did was he averted disaster in this state. Didn't solve the problem, but averted disaster, and we have a lot of complacency now about the levels of school funding. And the fact is we simply aren't investing in education the way we need to if we really want to get the outcomes that we expect from our children. I'd like to say something about innovation. Innovation is one of those things that's very spotty in this county. You can see some highly innovative practices, but there's no consistency across this county in infusing innovative practices and 21st century learning, the kind of experience-based learning that Mark's talking about, into our schools. It's very, very, it's uncommon, and it shouldn't be uncommon because we know what to do. Part of what's keeping us from doing what we know that we should be doing is the funding, as I've already mentioned. But there's also education is highly political. You know, a lot of decisions about education policy come from people who don't know anything about education. Well, it's true. I'm not going to go into that in much detail, but one thing I would like to put on your radar is this whole, going back to the whole idea of standards. Standards and assessment we don't talk about assessment a whole lot, but our teachers are going to do what they're assessed on. And so we have to have, if we're really going to make a difference in what goes on in our schools, we're going to have to think seriously about assessing what we value. And if we value 21st century learning, we're going to have to figure out a way to work that into our assessment standards, because we're still assessing for the 20th century, and our teachers are doing what they have to do in order to be deemed successful in their classrooms. And so we have to think differently about what our expectations are and how we can measure that success before we're ever going to really see any systemic change. And so one specific thing I'll say in closing is we talk a great deal about the achievement gap, and we all know that this is a problem. And kids come to school already with these deficits in place. The achievement gap happens before children ever arrive at school. We know that there are three things, the three most effective strategies for dealing with the achievement gap. Two of them are what to do after the fact, which are summer school programs and after-school learning, simply more time on task for kids who've fallen behind or started behind. But the most effective strategy by far is to prevent the achievement gap, and that is through early education, and that's not just preschool, that's parent education from zero, from birth to the time they walk into our schools. We know that we can do that. We know that if we put sufficient energy and resources into preventing the achievement gap, our children will be far better off, and we as a society will be more productive and more successful. And so we need the political will to say, let's step up and fund our education systems and have meaningful early education systems that are really going to make a difference. So there's a lot of good news about what's going on in education in Santa Clara County. We are actually one of the highest performing regions of the country in terms of academics. But even here, we still see some huge issues with equity of access to high-quality programs, and I'm getting the hook, so I'm going to walk away. So I hope that all of you will do what you can in the future to advocate for better funding and for high-quality early learning for every child in California.
John Gundry, thank you again for partnering with us, not only today, but throughout the year on so many activities that we do together, including our Salad Bars for Schools run through Lamb Research that has placed, what is it now, 198 salad bars in 198 schools, 145,000 kids. So John Gundry, thanks again to you and your team for your leadership. Hey, here's the good news. I'm just about the only thing left standing between you and lunch. And so I will be very brief with a thank you. But it's so fun to come to a summit with such an engaged community that the same amount of people that were here for the beginning of the movie are still here at the end of the movie. We've all been to conferences where that is not the case. So thank you for your commitment to our communities and the quality education of all of our kids. We've learned a lot today as we continue not only this conversation, but this effort together to ensure quality education for all of our kids. We learned from that teacher shortage panel that 3 of every 4 districts struggle to start the school year with a teacher in every classroom, and that we do have solutions ranging from financial incentives, mentoring and supporting our new teachers, addressing our housing crisis, a variety of options that we need to hit all of the above and get started. We learned on our K-12 policy panel, as John Gundry just talked about with the local control funding formula, of ways that we can not only assess how that is being implemented, but how we make sure that it's a success to have overall funding increases in all of our schools, as well as to level the playing field in a much more holistic way. We learned about STEM coalitions and the STEM pipeline, and we're excited about our work through Dr. David Poulter around community colleges to careers and the potential we have working with Debbie Budd and her colleagues in 15 community colleges, 253,000 students right here, already used to our terrible traffic and our high housing costs that our companies can pursue. Why is that so important? One, we have a shrinking middle class, and we can take those students, often dreaming of the middle class, to great middle and upper middle class jobs in our companies. And two, we can help give a booster shot to the immediate need of further diversifying our tech campuses, both by gender and ethnicity. Because as Debbie would tell you, 253,000 students at those 15 colleges, 78% are people of color. 55% are female. What an opportunity we have to channel them to our companies for great STEM-based jobs that don't always require a 4-year master's or a PhD degree. And finally, we learned, building on that, more effective career pathways. We heard about IBM's P-TECH model, emphasizing STEM subjects and blending free public high school with community college. And we have an intern in our office this summer who is an example of that in high school, studying at De Anza College as a foster youth and just breaking the doors down with how hard he's willing to work and the skills that he has. And we learned about SunPower. Hundreds of high school kids throughout the state every year in SunPower's facilities learning about great middle and upper middle class jobs in the solar industry. There's so much that we can build on today. But I always like to end with a question and a commercial. Tell me, where are you going to be on Thanksgiving morning this year? What was that? If you said the Applied Materials Silicon Valley Turkey Trot, you are right. So please give me an example. One female, one male who already knows where they're going to be on November 23rd, please stand. Please stand. Here you go. You can sweat in style now with last year's Shirt as You Train. A male? Preferably a size large male. Thank you for absolutely not volunteering in any way and putting me in the spot. My colleagues are passing out brochures to both our Turkey Trot. If we hit our goal this year with your help, it's $1 million for families in need, just this year alone. And on the backside of that flyer is our Santa Run Silicon Valley, where you can dress with 6,000 of your closest friends like Santa or his elves and run through the streets of San Jose to keep Christmas in the Park strong for 600,000 primarily low-income families who visit and enjoy Christmas in the Park every year. Thank you again for joining us today. Let me ask to come up to the stage my colleague and an amazing leader from the Leadership Group's Foundation, and that is, of course, Paul Escobar. Paul?
Okay. Thank you, everyone, for coming to the Education Summit this year. So we are going to be moving now to the networking lunch. Lunch will be out where the breakfast was served earlier. You can grab that and then take it into the breakout rooms. Both of our keynotes from the morning and the afternoon will be there. There will also be some tables that have assigned subjects. Many of our panelists will still be here, so please find some individuals that you'd like to talk to and go in some more depth with your questions. We will also be having 2 prize drawings, one for an Xbox and one's for a specialized bike. So stick around. That'll happen at 12:45. Thank you.